The royal seal crossed Seris Vane's map room door in molten bronze, while her survey chain still lay uncoiled on the table inside. "This office is suspended by order of the Dragon King," Stone Chancellor Rusk said. "All maps, rods, ledgers, and instruments are crown property." Behind him, King Kael Draven lowered the signed order into Rusk's hand. Under the threshold, in the gap between two obsidian tiles, a thread of grey dust trembled. Nobody looked at it but Seris. Dust did that above a working line. It had done it in the ashfall shaft before the shaft took her mother, and the foreman had called it dust. Seris felt the loss before the door closed. Her maps were not decorations. They were warnings, measurements, lives made visible in ink and stone. The bronze was still soft. She had perhaps a minute. "Chancellor," Rusk turned, generous now that he had won. "My mother's chain is on that table." A brass chain was worth less than a guard's boots, and grief was the safest thing a disgraced woman could ask for. "Crown property, Examiner Vane. The maps are crown property. The rods are crown property. My mother died in the ashfall shaft, and that chain passed to me by examination. It is engraved with her name. You have taken my office. I am asking for a keepsake." The corridor watched. Rusk had spent 18 days making her look hysterical. A chancellor who denied a woman her mother's chain before witnesses looked small. "Break the seal at the corner," he said. "The chain only. Record it." Seris entered alone. She did not look at the map table, the plan chest, or the work she might never see again. She lifted the chain, carried it out, and held it to the light. For the record. Brass survey chain. 66 feet. Engraved V. Vane. Calibration marks 4, 11, 19, and 33. Certified against the Royal Standard Rod in the year of the second ashfall. Read that back. The clerk read it back. Written and witnessed. Written and witnessed. Examiner. Rusk turned away, satisfied. He administered surveys. He did not make them. He had forgotten that a fault map was measurements taken with one instrument. Any chain could draw a line. Only that chain, worn by her mother's hands and then her own, would draw the same line twice. He had sealed the map and handed her the ruler. "You cannot seal that room," Seris said. "The fault map inside is the only certified record of the stress line beneath the new wing." "The only outdated record," Rusk corrected. "Your refusal delayed the royal expansion for 18 days. Wages are stalled. Contracts are endangered. The ground is moving. The ground settled. Your interpretation turned settlement into alarm." Seris turned to Kael. "Your Majesty, 3 builders were injured under the west arch this morning. All 3 were standing above the line I marked." Kael's jaw tightened. He was 30, young for a king but not soft. Dark, bronze scale markings showed at his wrists. "The Chancellor has given me the revised survey," Kael said. "It shows no active line under the west arch, because my line was removed. An accusation made after suspension is convenient," Rusk said. "Then, open the room and compare the layers. The room is sealed to prevent tampering." Seris crouched and set 2 fingers flat near the trembling gap. "Your Majesty, come put your hand here." Rusk moved before Kael could. "The examiner is inviting the Dragon King to kneel on a floor and feel dust." "Yes," Seris said. "It is a 9-month-old building settling into its own weight. There is dust in every joint of this palace." He was right. New buildings settled. Dust moved. Obsidian was not an instrument. Every sentence was correct, and assembled in that order. Before a king, they became a lie. "It is dust," Seris agreed. "That is why I made a map." Kael's eyes met hers. Then he came down off the step and spoke only to her. "Do you know what this building is?" "A palace on an active fault. It is 9 months old. 9 months ago there were 4 claims to this throne and 3 had armies. It ended in the lower court. 640 dead, Examiner Vane. I read the list once a month because I signed for it. The houses stood down because a new wing was rising. Stop the work today, and by winter I may be counting again. His bronze-gold eyes held hers. So I ask one question. Do you know that line is moving? Or have you measured that it could? Everything in her wanted to say no. Her mother had once said no to a shaft foreman about a bearing not yet load-tested. They used the word against her for years. Then ashfall came down with her inside it, and the word stayed in the record. The line is active within the last 2 centuries, Seris said. The strain is accumulating. I have 3 injuries this morning standing on it. I do not have a tremor recorded against a fixed gauge, and until I do, I will not say no to a king and mean it. Then you have measured that it could. Today? Yes. Something closed in his face. Too late. Seris understood she had given him the only word he needed. The expansion continues under revised supervision, Kyle said. Continue. Revised. Supervision. Review. Not safety. Not truth. Not workers. A shout rose from the far end of the corridor. Foreman Orin Vale hurried toward them. Master Jalen's arm is broken. The brace slipped when the floor kicked under him. Another tool accident? Rusk asked. No, my lord. The floor moved. Did you measure it? No. Then you saw a man fall and invented a cause. Seris stepped forward. He does not need a brass rod to know the floor moved under his boots. And you no longer have standing to interpret his fear, Rusk replied. Kael lifted one hand. Chancellor, injury reports from the West Arch come to me tonight. Of course, Majesty, Rusk said. Seris knew what that meant. Times could shift. A tremor could become carelessness with one clerk's pen. Stop the work now, she said. Kael did not. A guard approached with the grey leather strip used to suspend royal examiners. Seris removed her gloves, unfastened the brass badge from her coat, and placed it in the guard's palm. I will be available, she said, and I will be accurate. The guards escorted her through the lower court, where her dismissed survey team waited. Mara with red eyes, Tomlin with closed fists, and old Beric staring at the palace wall. They took everything? Mara asked. Seris opened her coat and showed the coil of brass at her hip. Not everything. Beric stopped looking at the wall. He had measured foundations before she was born, and he understood in one breath. 66 feet. 4 marks, 1 instrument, 1 line. They gave it to you, he said. I asked for my mother, girl. His voice cracked. They gave it to you. Seris looked toward the unfinished royal wing. Somewhere inside, Jalen's broken arm was being written down as his own fault. We rebuild the proof, she said, outside their room, outside their seals. We start with the line. A deep sound moved through the palace behind them. Not thunder. Not machinery. Stone speaking under pressure. Through the open arches of the foundation hall, the obsidian tile beneath her sealed map room door rose, edges glowing dull red. Then a second tile lifted beside it. Then a third. They formed a jagged path across the floor, where her buried fault line began. And at the far end of that path, a hairline crack opened. The first place Seris went after losing her office was not home. She went to the West Laundry Court, where palace dust fell from work coats before it could be swept into official nothing. Mara carried a basket. Tomlin followed empty-handed. Beric had gone to recover their old field ledger. Beneath Seris's coat, her mother's brass chain pressed cold against her ribs. Steam rose from basins. Women beat mortar, dust and blood from builders' shirts. Nobody stopped when Seris entered, but every paddle slowed. Orin Vale stood near the drying racks, his work coat turned inside out over his arm. You should not be here, he said. I know. Did they ask who spoke to me? I told them stone dust makes all men cough, and I could not hear questions. Seris looked at the coat. Grey powder clung to the inner sleeve. May I? My wage mark is stitched inside. If they find it missing, I will not take the coat, only dust from where your arm was against the brace when Jalen fell. He held it out. Seris tapped the sleeve over folded linen. Pale dust fell first. Under it were sharp glints like trapped stars, fresh, sheer crystals. Stone under present strain made those cuts when pressure forced mineral faces to break clean. Mara saw her expression. Active? Recent enough that Rusk's revised survey is worse than wrong. Orin looked toward the palace. Can that clear Jalen? It can begin to. Dust could not name who altered a map or restore her badge, but it could prove the earth was moving beneath men still ordered to work. A bell rang from the upper yard. 2 guards entered with a clerk wearing Rusk's grey stone badge. By order of the Stone Chancellor, all garments from the West Arch are to be surrendered. Any worker withholding garments will lose injury standing and wage protection. Seris slid the folded linen into her sleeve cuff. The clerk began checking names stitched into collars. Rusk had come after every surface that might have touched the truth. Take off your wage mark, Seris whispered. Orin stared. That is grounds for docking. Not if every coat loses one. Mara caught the eye of Mistress Hale. The new soap Rusk's office ordered. Does it eat thread? Mistress Hale tore a wage mark free. Terrible soap. Ruined stitching. Then women ripped labels from collars, sleeves, and hems. Tomlin dumped 3 tunics into grey water. By the time the guards crossed the court, half the garments had no names. Stop this at once, the clerk snapped. Mistress Hale held up a limp thread. You bought the soap. One guard recognized Seris. Examiner Vane. Suspended Examiner Vane. I am returning personal linen. You are not permitted to collect construction material. I have collected none. True enough. The dust in her sleeve was a question folded in linen. The clerk stared at the ruined wage marks. Every worker from the West Arch will report for questioning before sunset. Questions meant docked pay and injury claims quietly rewritten. Questioning about an accident? Seris asked. About contamination of evidence. The evidence was being washed before your order arrived. The guards left with anonymous coats and anger they could not sort by name. Orin looked at her sleeve. You got enough? Yes. For what? For a file they do not control. Across the city, Kyle Draven read the evening report in a chamber smelling of hot wax and wet stone. 1 builder collapsed from misuse of brace. 1 arm broken. No fixed-gauge tremor recorded. No verified structural shift. At the bottom, Rusk recommended restricting Seris's contact with builders. Leave it, Kale said. Go to bed, Chancellor. He went down. Alone. The new wing at night had no hammers, only rope creaking above and green mortar in the air. Kale found the West Arch because he had watched them carry Jalen out. He knelt and put his palm flat against the stone. Come and put your hand here. He had refused her in front of witnesses, and she had not asked twice. Nothing. He waited. He had waited out 4 claimants and 3 armies. He knelt on the cold floor until his coronation scar showed white across his palm. The floor did not tremble, hum, or answer. It was stone, laid 9 months ago doing what stone did, which was nothing. Kale stood and brushed grit from his hand. He had gone down himself. He had not sent a clerk or taken Rusk's word. He had tested the woman's claim with his own body, and the claim had failed. For the first time in 18 days, he felt careful. It never occurred to him that a fault does not perform, that a line under strain can hold for years, that Seris Vane's discipline existed because the ground will not answer a man who kneels and asks politely whether it intends to kill him. He gave the order from the stairs. Accept the injury classification. Send me the names of every man questioned. Prudent Majesty, Rusk said from above. By dusk, Seris had no office, no badge, and no legal authority, so she used her kitchen table. Mara barred the door. Tomlin cleared the table. Beric set the lamp low and left, where a chainman placed light when measurements mattered. Seris spread the dust under her lens. Fresh sheer crystals fractured light in hard planes. She wrote the first page of the independent safety file. Sample: West Arch inner sleeve dust. Finding: fresh sheer crystals consistent with active ground movement. Consequence: workers remain in danger. Then she did not go to bed. Mara. The floor plan of the West Arch. Not Rusk's. Mine. Mara brought it. Orin was here. Seris put her finger on the plan. Facing the brace. Left arm up. The dust came from the inner sleeve, so it fell from above and behind him, off the arch face. Agreed, Beric said. A sheer crystal was a fact about direction. Stone broke along the path pressure took. Red enough faces in the ground told you which way it was pushing. She had 2 points. The map room threshold, where dust had trembled at 9. The West Arch, where Jalen's arm had broken at 11. Beric. The chain. He uncoiled it across the table, 66 feet of brass running over the edge, her mother's marks catching the lamp at 4, 11, 19, and 33. Seris laid the strike angle from the crystals and drew. Threshold. West Arch. Straight through and beyond, because a fault did not stop where paperwork stopped. The pencil crossed the drafting hall, the stair, and the long gallery. The room went quiet. The line ran under the wine cellar, the guard station, and the tile court where nobles took winter sun. Then it went under the royal apartments. Seris stopped. How far under? Mara asked. The bedchamber is here. Seris did not touch it. The line is here. Beric leaned over the table. 61 years of measuring foundations, and Seris watched him arrive. He is sleeping on it, Beric said. Tomlin laughed once, ugly and exhausted. Then let him. Nobody answered, because the line also ran beneath the servants' hall, where 40 people slept in bunks. It ran beneath the east kitchen, where banked fires would be opened before dawn. It ran beneath the laundry court, where Mistress Hale would stand in 6 hours. The king had guards, warning, and 100 rooms. The laundry had a stone ceiling. Seris pulled the safety file close, broke the blue wax, and wrote a second page. Projected fault trace, West Arch to Royal Quarter. Method: shear. Face orientation, 2 fixed points, mother's chain, persons above the line. By shift, in order of exposure. She started the list with the laundry. Seris sent Tomlin to the West Arch, with bread and a lie. If anyone asks, she told him, you are feeding your uncle. I do not have an uncle in the palace. Then choose a hungry one. By 7, her kitchen table had become an office Rusk could not seal. The folded fault projection lay under a cutting board when neighbors passed. The safety file sat inside an empty flour tin. Her mother's chain coiled beside the lamp. Mara copied worker rolls from memory. Beric checked the line again, because measurement deserved suspicion. Seris opened the cabinet above the stove and took down her private pendulum gauge, a brass weight inside a glass case, fixed to a smoked paper drum that turned by clockwork. Her mother had built the first version after Ashfall, too late to save herself, and Seris had rebuilt it better. The palace called it unnecessary. Rusk called it sentimental. Seris called it a witness that did not need permission to remember. She removed yesterday's smoked strip. Tiny white scratches marked ordinary pulses. Cartwheels, hammering, the deep breath of the city. Then she saw the first hard deviation. 8:57 分. The map room dust had trembled near 9. A second mark cut through soot. 11:12 分. Yalen's arm had broken at 11. Beric lowered himself into a chair. He did not say there it is. He looked at the smoked strip for a long moment, then up at her with the face he wore when a young chainman brought him a number he wanted true. Whose gauge is that, girl? Seris did not answer. Say it the way Rusk will say it. It is an uncertified instrument, she said, of my own manufacture. Unsealed, unwitnessed, kept in the kitchen of a suspended examiner, wound by her own hand, and produced after she was accused of inventing danger. And the drum? I removed the paper myself, alone. So you have a mark on soot that you made. In your house, on your machine, falling near an injury you need explained. Mara's face went hot. Beric, I am saying it first, where it costs nothing. Seris put both hands flat on the table. He was right. The gauge proved nothing to a court. It proved everything to her, and those were different rooms. Then it is not proof, she said. It is a witness with no standing. Like Orin, like Jalen, like every man on that arch. Beric's mouth moved slightly. Write it anyway. I will. And I will write the objection beneath it, so when Rusk says a woman made evidence in her kitchen, the court will find he is quoting me. She uncapped the ink. A file that admits its holes is heavier than one that pretends it has none. Not enough. But it was the first fixed-gauge record. A knock came. 3 taps. A pause. 2 more. Orin stood outside with 2 women and a young mason whose cheek was bruised yellow. All wore plain cloaks. They questioned us until midnight, Orin said. And this morning, Orin's jaw worked. This morning the king restored our wages. Mara made the first hopeful sound anyone had made in that kitchen in 3 days. All 4 holds lifted before breakfast, Orin said. Signed, posted in the eating yard. Men cried over it. Orin, by noon, the 4 of us were moved to night shift. The kitchen went quiet. Not punishment, he said. The king forbade wage holds. Just the roster. Chancellor's office reorganized the arch crews for continuity of testimony. So men under question work the same hours together and do not contaminate day shift. Seris did not move. Which hours? Second bell to dawn. Where? West Arch. Under the brace. Where Jalen went down. Nobody said anything. Seris thought of a young king drawing his pen through 4 lines at breakfast. He helped you, she said. He meant it. I know. And it put you on the line at 3 in the morning with no foreman and no light. I know that too. No file had a column for that. Rusk had obeyed Kale instantly, generously, in writing, then converted the king's one decent instinct into 4 men standing on an active fault in the dark. Every good thing that man does, Beric said quietly, that snake finds a use for. Seris took testimony without ceremony. Time, place, position, injury. Who arrived first? What words were used before the official clerk came? The pattern formed quickly. Every injury had first been spoken as ground kick or brace slip during tremor. By the time reports reached Rusk's office, all had become tool misuse, worker carelessness, or panic caused by Seris Vane. She wrote roles, not names. Injuries, not families. The wage threat testimonies went to Mara, coded by role and mark. Beric took the time chart and pendulum objection to an old guild widow who asked no questions. By noon, Rusk's proclamation appeared at the gates, Quarry Road, and Eating Yard. Seris Vane, suspended examiner, was charged with unlawful interference, contamination of testimony, and causing panic. Anyone providing documents, garments, instruments, or statements would lose protection pending review. Tomlin read it aloud because his voice shook less than Mara's. When he finished, Seris looked at the workers near her stove. Their faces told her what Rusk had chosen. Not prison first. Hunger first. Burn the notes, the bruised mason said. No. Then we are finished. No. We change custody. She separated the file. Technical evidence stayed with her. Witness lists scattered. Time charts left by back doors. If Rusk took one person, he would not take the truth. By evening, the kitchen was empty except for Mara and lamp smoke. Seris rewound the pendulum gauge and set a fresh smoked strip inside. Mara folded copies of the exposure list. They are making you the danger. They have to. If the ground is the danger, Rusk's plan is false. A low vibration passed through the room, not enough to rattle a cup. Mara felt nothing and kept folding. The needle scratched one clean line through the soot. Seris crossed the room before she knew she had stood. "What?" Mara asked. "Quiet." Seris got the lens over the glass and did not touch the drum. You never touched a drum. The mark matched the 11-12 that had broken Jalen's arm. Same bite through soot, same insult of a force that could snap bone from underneath and pass through a kitchen without moving a cup. And it was the wrong shape. A pendulum did not only say when, it said which way. The weight swung against motion, and the needle cut long in the direction the ground shoved it. "Mara, bring the strips." All of them. They laid 11 days of soot end to end. Seris walked the table twice with the lens. By the second pass, she felt only cold arithmetic rising from paper. 9 marks, west-northwest. Her line, 2 marks the 8th day, and tonight cutting north. Beric returned before she called for him. He needed one look at her face. "There is another one," he said. "A second trace. Under the palace? I do not know. I have 2 points, 11 days apart. I cannot draw a line from that. I need a third mark. And until it comes, I do not know what is standing on it." Mara looked at the map, the careful line, the shift list with laundry at the top. "Then your map is wrong. My map is incomplete." Seris put the lens down. "Which is exactly what Rusk has been saying for 18 days. Nobody had an answer. Outside, the palace bell struck second, and 4 men walked under the west arch to begin the night shift a king had given them. Before third bell, Seris reached the quarry road with her mother's chain beneath her coat and Mara's false repair order in a basket of mending cloth. Orin waited at the second milestone. He should have been asleep. His hair had gone white, not with age, with dust. It filled his collar, mouth, and the creases beside his eyes. "Nobody's hurt," he said. 3 nights, nobody hurt. Dust came down heavy about 4th bell, and Nedry swore he felt the boards go, but nothing cracked. "Orin, I'm not staying, Examiner." Seris stopped. "I have not slept 4 hours since the roster changed. Neither has Nedry, neither has Hask's boy. You know what happens to a man on an arch when he is 4 hours short. It is not the ground that gets him. It is his own hands. I know. To move to day shift, I signed the paper saying the floor did not kick and I fell like a fool." His jaw worked. "So I am signing it." Mara made a small sound. "Say the thing," Orin said. Seris said nothing. She would not put words in a tired man's mouth to strengthen her file. "You should sign it," she said, "and sleep. I will not spend you." That was not courtesy. It was a term. "And your file?" "My file has your dust in it. Your dust does not need you awake." Orin laughed once, hoarse and awful. "The king restored my wage." My girl cried at the table. Then he walked back toward the city to sign a paper, saying he had been careless. Seris watched him go. That was the cost of one kind man's pen at one breakfast table, and there was no column for it. "Ledge 7, Beric said. "Before the light gets high." The royal quarry opened in grey terraces, marked with chalk numbers and dragon claw hoist scars. At the gate, Beric presented an old leather token, inspection right, issued before Rusk. Never revoked. The clerk paled. "Examiner Vane is suspended. From palace certification," Seris said. "Not from quarry inspection under Ashfall's safety code. Old law-frightened men who lived by fresh orders." He let them in. They crossed the lower terrace. Seris saw cracked blocks turned inward, shipment marks scraped thin, fresh stones stacked too quickly, at ledge 7. Beric stopped. "That cut is wrong." Seris knelt. The fracture ran at a hard diagonal. She scraped a sliver into a paper fold. Mara whispered, "Matches the arch?" Not yet. Truth did not become truth because Hope recognized it. By the 5th block, The pattern settled. The quarry stone was breaking along the same pressure path as the palace foundation. A shout rose from the gate. Rusk's quarry deputy came down with guards and a sealed order. His boots were too polished for this place. By authority of the Stone Chancellor, all instruments belonging to Seris Vane are seized as illegally altered. The deputy pointed at the chain. That includes the chain. This chain was recorded and witnessed as personal property yesterday, and is now suspected of recalibration fraud. He unfolded the notice. Royal survey rods associated with the suspended examiner were found inconsistent with standard measure. Any map produced from said instruments is void pending review. Seris understood. Rusk could not erase her mother's chain after allowing her to take it, so he would poison every measurement it had made. Where are the rods? In custody. Who found the inconsistency? Royal Standards Office. Which clerk? The deputy smiled. A suspended examiner does not question royal standards. A black carriage rolled through the gate. Cale Draven stepped down with enough escort to stop the quarry, and enough restraint to avoid ceremony. For one dangerous breath, Seris wanted him to have come because he believed her. Then she saw the seizure notice in his hand. He had come because Rusk had made her look criminal. Examiner Vane, Cale said. Why are you in a royal quarry under seizure notice? Because your palace is made from this stone. Your instruments are under question. My chain was witnessed by Rusk's clerk. Your rods were not. My rods are not here. The deputy shifted. Cale noticed. Seris held up the paper fold. Fracture sample. No map. No rod. Only stone. The deputy reached. Seized. Cale moved first. Not towards Seris, but toward the deputy's hand. No. The quarry went still. Cale looked at her. If I allow you to keep it, what can it prove? Nothing alone. Then why stand in a seizure notice for it? Seris took the folded linen from her cuff. Because I do not need the palace to compare them. I need light. She set both on a stone crate. The sliver from ledge 7 and orange sleeve dust from the laundry court. Majesty, this is theatre. The deputy began. Be quiet, Cale said. Seris worked with the small lens on her belt chain and spoke because a measurement she could not narrate was a measurement she did not understand. This dust came from the west arch, from a mason's inner sleeve. These are fresh, sheer faces. They grow perpendicular to strain, so they tell the direction of the push. West, northwest. I read that before I came here. And I wrote it down. She set the quarry sliver beside it. This block was cut 3 weeks ago. It has never been in the palace and has carried no load. Beric leaned in with his glass. The silence lasted long enough for a hoist chain to swing twice. Same face, Beric said. Same angle. Cale looked at Seris. Say what it means, not what you want it to mean. It was the first sentence he had said to her like an equal. It means this quarry is cutting stone already loaded along the same direction as the ground beneath your west arch. It fails the same way because it was born failing the same way, and someone has shipped it into a foundation sitting across that exact strain. And what does it not mean? It does not prove this block went into your palace. It does not prove Rusk knew. It gives me a question, not an accusation. Who signed the shipping order? The deputy had gone very still. Seris noticed because placement was her trade. He stood before the ledge 9 stack, hands behind his back, the way an official stood in front of a thing. Beric, she said. The outside block on 9. Turn it. Majesty, the deputy said. The stacks are load set. It is dangerous. Turn it. Cale said. It took Beric and 2 quarrymen with a bar. The block came round slowly. The inward face was already cracked. Not from turning. A long diagonal split ran through it, dark at the lip where weather had touched it weeks ago. It had been stacked with that face hidden. Turn the next one, Cale said. The next was cracked. The third was cracked. By the 6th, quarrymen no longer waited for orders. They worked down the stack while the deputy watched men discover what they had loaded onto palace carts all winter. The ground had not moved. It had not needed to. Those faces had been split before the blocks left the terrace, and someone had turned each crack inward, stacked it, and signed for it. Kael straightened slowly. How many carts went to the palace this month? The deputy said nothing. How many this week? Seris looked down the road toward the city, where Rusk held the gates, standards office, injury reports, and shipping orders. Majesty, she said, picking up her chain. The carts are not the question. The carts are already in your foundation. The question is whether the orders are still in his office by tonight. The shipping orders were not in Rusk's office by nightfall. Seris knew before she reached the palace gate, because the gate clerk was too ready for her. No construction archive access after fourth bell, he said. Stone Chancellor's temporary restriction. Since when? Seris asked. Since today. Which hour? Temporary restrictions do not require hour marks. They do when they close an active safety inquiry. Behind him, the palace rose in pale tears, the new wing unfinished against the bruised evening sky. Somewhere inside, cracked blocks had already been mortared into the foundation. Somewhere under them, servants were setting beds and lighting lamps. Kael stood beside Seris, still dusted from the quarry. The workers watched him more than they watched her. Open the archive, he said. The clerk swallowed. Majesty. Chancellor Rusk ordered all construction records transferred to night custody for sorting. Where? The drafting annex. Seris heard the mistake before the clerk could enjoy it. The drafting annex was not a record room. It was a maze of copy tables, drying racks, and clerks loyal to whoever signed their wages. Records transferred there could be separated, recopied, or burned as spoiled drafts before midnight. Majesty, Seris said, if we walk in through the front, every useful page will already be in another drawer. Kael turned to her. There was quarry grit on his cuff, and a shallow cut across his knuckle from helping turn the blocks. What do you need? Not entrance. Exit. Beric understood first. Draftsmen take spoiled sheets out through the ash yard, Mara said, and dismissed draftsmen take them before anyone asks why. Seris looked at Kael. If you want to help, do not command the annex. Stand at the front and make them perform obedience while we take the back. His face sharpened at being told where his usefulness ended. Go, he said. I will be loud enough. He was. By the time Seris, Mara, and Beric reached the ash yard, Kael's voice carried through the annex windows, royal enough to keep every clerk standing in the wrong room. The ash yard smelled of wet paper and old ink. Barrels lined the wall, filled with scraped plans waiting for the morning furnace. A thin man in a patched draftsman's coat stood beside the third barrel with one hand under his lapel. Marapel? He whispered. Mara stopped. I am Ilvan Rowe, former junior copyist of the West Foundation plan. Former, as of noon. Seris stepped forward. Why? Because I asked why Examiner Vane's refusal seal appeared under Chancellor Rusk's approval layer. The yard seemed to narrow. Ilvan pulled folded vellum from his coat. I took one sheet, not the final plan. A spoiled pull. The layers did not align. I thought it was error until they dismissed me and searched my desk. Beric reached, then stopped and looked at Seris. She took it by the corners. Under the yard lamp, the plan looked ordinary. Foundation grid, west arch, load numbers, survey stamps. Then Seris angled it. There, her own refusal seal, faint beneath a thicker grey approval wash. Rusk's office had not replaced her refusal. It had buried it under a later layer and copied the clean version forward. Mara's voice thinned. He covered your no. No, Seris said. He used my no as the base. The sheet still carries pressure from the first stamp. Beric bent close. Engage? Different. Mine dried before his layer crossed it. Ilvan shivered. Is that enough? Not alone. He flinched. But it is real, she said. And real can be joined. A shout came from the annex. Yart. Rusk had found the quiet place. Mara shoved the vellum into Seris's hands. Go. Seris did not run. Running turned evidence into guilt. She walked toward the south passage, the plan flat beneath her coat, while Beric knocked over the nearest ash barrel with the offended dignity of an old man whose boot had been insulted. Wet paper spilled across the stones. 2 guards burst in and saw chaos, not direction. Ilvan threw ruined plans into the air. Mara cursed him beautifully. Beric cursed everyone. For 10 useful seconds, the yard became a theater of incompetence. Seris reached the passage. Rusk stood there. He had not hurried. His robe was clean, his face composed. "Examiner Vane," he said, "you are persistent beyond prudence. You taught me the value of custody. You have stolen royal drafts. You moved safety records into a burnyard for sorting. Then you will not mind if the king reviews what escaped sorting." His eyes dropped to her coat. "You mistake possession for proof. No, I mistake possession for survival." Rusk smiled faintly. "A woman with a stolen sheet and an illegal chain. You are building a case for your own confinement." Behind him, Kael appeared at the passage mouth. For once, Rusk did not know he was there. "Step aside," Kael said. Rusk turned with perfect control. "Majesty, she has removed restricted plans, and you transferred live construction records to a furnace yard after I asked for the shipping orders, for efficiency. Then be efficient now. Open the sorting ledger," a smaller man might have argued. Rusk bowed. "At once!" Seris watched him leave, and knew he had lost 1 sheet, not the system. Kael looked at her coat. "Do you have it?" "Yes." "Keep it." The answer surprised her. "If I take it, it becomes mine," he said. "If you keep it, Rusk has to answer you." It was the nearest thing to understanding he had offered. They went not to the throne chamber, but to Seris's kitchen, because she refused to put the sheet under a palace lamp she did not control. Ilvan came with them, shaking so badly Mara made him hold broth. Beric cleaned the vellum corners with a dry brush. Seris set her mother's chain along the edge to keep the plan flat. Layer by layer, the crime appeared. First, her blue refusal seal. Second, a scraped patch where the fault line should have crossed the west arch. Third, Rusk's grey approval seal laid over the refusal, not beside it. Fourth, a copied foundation grid shifted just enough to move danger out from under the new wing. Seris wrote the 5th proof page. Layered inspection seals show Seris Vane's refusal was covered by later approval. Official plan altered after refusal. Ilvan whispered, "Will that clear you?" Seris looked at the place where her no had been buried and thought of Orin signing himself careless, of Jalen's arm, of 4 men walking under the arch at second bell. "It clears the warning," she said. "Not the wound." A knock struck the door. 3 hard blows. Mara lifted the knife. A royal messenger stood outside with Rusk's seal on his satchel. "For Examiner Vane," he said. "A formal summons." Seris opened it. By order of the Stone Chancellor, Seris Vane would appear at noon to answer charges of forged instruments, stolen plans, worker interference, and deliberate construction sabotage. At the bottom, in smaller print, was the part meant to empty her kitchen. All persons found holding copies, testimony, drafts, measures, samples, or soot strips connected to her unlawful inquiry would be charged as accomplices. Seris looked up. Around her table sat every person who had helped her keep the truth alive. Rusk had stopped chasing evidence. He had started making friendship a crime. The summons cleared Seris's kitchen more effectively than any guard could have, not because the people at her table were cowards, because they were not rich. Ilvan Rowe had a rented cot over a printer's stable. Mara's younger sister depended on her wages. Tomlin sent half his pay to a mother whose hands no longer closed around sewing needles. Beric was old enough to have enemies who would enjoy watching him beg for guild protection. Seris read Rusk's final line again. All persons found holding copies, Testimony, drafts, measures, samples, or soot strips connected to her unlawful inquiry would be charged as accomplices. Then she folded the summons and set it on the table. "No one carries anything tonight," she said. Mara's eyes flashed. "That gives him everything." "No, it gives him nothing easy." She divided the room by risk. Ilvan would go to a chapel dormitory that kept no guest lists for displaced clerks. Tomlin would take no paper, only memory. Mara would carry the worker codes because Rusk would expect Seris to hide the technical evidence, not witness protection, inside a seamstress's prayer book. Beric would leave last, with the pendulum objection already copied into his own handwriting. KL stood by the door, silent through the sorting. Seris felt his attention like heat on stone. "You should not be here," she said without looking at him. "I signed the order that made Rusk bold enough to do this. Yes, I can place guards outside and make every neighbor ask why the king is protecting a woman accused of sabotage." His mouth closed. That at least was progress. He heard the answer before arguing with it. At noon, Seris entered the temporary inquiry hall with nothing in her hands. Rusk had chosen the glass-roofed drafting chamber, not a courtroom. Long tables stood in neat rows. Clerks waited with sharpened pens. Guildmasters sat where witnesses should have been. On the wall behind Rusk hung the clean version of the palace foundation plan. No fault line, no refusal seal, no danger. Kale sat at the head table, not on a throne. Seris noticed that choice. Rusk noticed her noticing. "Examiner Vane," Rusk began. "This is not a criminal trial. It is a professional review." Then, "Remove the guards. They are here to preserve order." "Whose?" A clerk wrote that down, which meant Rusk wanted the remark recorded. He opened with mercy. "If you acknowledge that your private inquiry exceeded proper authority, the Crown may restore your title under supervision. You would issue a corrected statement. Construction may continue except for minor observation zones. Workers would keep wages. Your team would avoid charges." There it was. A clean rope. Mara safe. Tomlin safe. Ilvan safe. Beric left alone. Seris publicly corrected, privately watched, professionally alive but hollowed out. KL looked at her then, not pleading, not commanding, waiting. Seris turned to the clean plan on the wall. "Where are the West Arch worker logs from the morning Jalen broke his arm?" Rusk blinked once. "Under review. Where are the night shift rosters created after the king restored wage holds? Personnel records are not structural evidence. They placed 4 questioned men on the active line at second bell." Murmurs moved through the guildmasters. Rusk lifted one finger. "Alleged active line. Then show the logs. The review concerns your conduct. My conduct began because the logs changed." Kale leaned forward. "Produce them." Rusk did not resist. That would have looked like concealment. He nodded to a clerk. A ledger came forward. Seris knew it was wrong before the clerk opened it. Too new, too clean. The binding had not learned the hands of foremen. Real work ledgers smelled of sweat, grease and rain. This smelled of dry leather and hurry. The clerk read. No entry for Jalen before noon. No note of floor movement. No night roster listing Orin, Nedry, Hask's boy, or the 4th man. Only one thing appeared repeatedly. Manpower reassigned due to panic caused by suspended Examiner Vane. Rusk let the silence build. Kale's jaw tightened. "Is there another ledger?" "The official ledger is before you, Majesty." Seris stepped closer. "May I examine the binding?" Rusk smiled. "You arrived with no authority to examine anything. Then ask your king whether he wants an inquiry or a performance." For the first time, irritation crossed Kale's face, and Seris could not tell which of them had earned it. "Let her examine it," he said. The clerk placed the ledger on the table as though it might bite. Seris did not turn pages first. She checked the spine, then the cord, then the pressure marks along the first blank sheet. There, a missing stitch. No magic, no revelation, just thread cut and reset by someone who thought only writing mattered. The ledger has been rebound, she said. Rusk sighed. Routine consolidation. In one night, after contamination. Seris held the cover open. The cord holes do not match. Original pages were removed and newer sheets inserted. The pressure marks underneath still show the old page thickness. Beric, seated at the back under pretense of guild age, stood slowly. Let an independent binder confirm it. Rusk's eyes sharpened. Master Beric is associated with the suspended examiner. Half the guildmasters looked away. KL saw it. Seris watched him see it. Not the ledger, but the machine around it. Every neutral person became contaminated the moment they stood near her. He rose. Work on the West Arch stops until the original worker logs are found. Rusk turned. Majesty, stopping that section before the foundation ceremony will read as instability. It is instability. It will weaken you before houses that barely stood down. Kale's face changed at the old wound. Then he looked at Seris's empty hands, at the clean plan on the wall, at the ledger pretending to be complete. One section, he said, the West Arch, stopped by royal order. It was not enough, but it was something with a cost. Rusk bowed. As you command. Seris did not thank Kale. Gratitude would have been too easy for everyone in the room. Outside the hall, Ilvan intercepted her near the water stairs, face grey with fear. I remembered the page numbers, he whispered. The spoiled pull had foundation sheet 31. The clean plan jumps from 29 to 32. There was a sheet between. Where? Drying racks. Blue room, unless they burned it. Before Seris could answer, a horn sounded from the construction yard. Not alarm. Announcement. A palace crier called from below, voice echoing between stone walls. By order of the Stone Chancellor, night crews will complete the ceremonial foundation facing before dawn. All West Arch stoppages apply after inspection of visible works. Seris looked at Kale. He had stopped the section. Rusk had moved the work into the night before the stop could touch it, and every cart already mortared into the foundation would be hidden under ceremony by morning. The night crews began before the palace lamps were fully lit. Seris heard the carts first. Not the ordinary roll of work wagons over stone, but the heavier drag of loaded axles moving fast and wrong. A construction yard had rhythms. Men saving time sounded different from men hiding it. From the water stairs, she watched the first cart enter through the south service gate. Its load was covered in black canvas. 2 guards walked beside it, not quarrymen. No foreman called counts. No clerk read the shipment aloud. Rusk had learned from the quarry. If cracked stone could testify by its face, he would bury the faces before dawn. Kale stood beside her, jaw set, the horn announcement still echoing behind them. I ordered the West Arch stopped, he said. You ordered visible work stopped after inspection. He looked at her. Seris did not soften it. That wording gave him a door. I did not write that wording. You signed the authority that lets him write around you. The words struck. She saw them land and saw him accept that they had landed fairly. What do you need? He asked. The cart book. Rusk controls it. Then I need the place where the cart book lies to the accountants. Mara caught up to them breathless. Contractor ledgers. Seris nodded. Stone can be hidden. Money leaves edges. KL opened his mouth, then closed it. A day ago he would have offered soldiers. Tonight, he said, tell me where not to stand. That was better. They crossed through the old granary passage, not the main construction yard. Beric knew the route from repairs done before Seris was born. Tomlin moved ahead with a lantern shuttered under his coat. The air smelled of wet mortar, animal sweat, and hot metal from the lime braziers. At the edge of the contractor office, they stopped. Inside, 2 clerks worked under Rusk's grey seal, copying numbers from one ledger to another. Outside the window, carts rolled toward the West Arch with no quarry chalk visible on the blocks. Mara whispered. They are making a clean book. No, Seris said. They are making a late book. A clean lie took weeks. A late lie took exhausted clerks, fresh ink, and fear. Kael's hand closed at his side. I can enter, and they will close the ledgers before we learn which pages matter. Seris studied the room. 3 books on the desk. 1 shipping ledger, 1 wage ledger, 1 contract ledger with green ties. The green one mattered. It did not record stone. It recorded reasons. Tomlin, she whispered. The ash chute. He vanished under the low arch. 5 minutes later, smoke coughed from the contractor office hearth. One clerk cursed. The other grabbed the nearest stack of papers away from the sparks. The green-tied ledger stayed open because men saved loose pages before bound books. Beric moved with surprising speed for an old chainman. He slid through the side door, lifted 1 blotting sheet from the desk, and came back before the clerk had finished blaming the chimney. Seris pressed the blotting sheet under the lantern. Mirror ink appeared. Bonus schedule, early completion, ceremonial facing, west arch. Mara inhaled. They were paid to cover it before the foundation ceremony. Not paid, Seris said. Rewarded if complete before public inspection. She read more. Replacement stone variants approved. Cost savings retained by Chancellor's discretionary foundation fund. There it was. Not simply haste. Profit. A shout rose inside. Beric's hand went to the doorframe. They noticed. Kael stepped into the open then. Not with soldiers, not with fire, but with the simple weight of being king. Open the contractor books, he said. The clerks froze. One dropped his pen. Rusk appeared from the inner passage as if summoned by resistance. Majesty, this office is under active reconciliation, so I say. His eyes moved once, to Seris, then to the blotting sheet in her hand. The suspended examiner has stolen financial material. I have preserved an impression from a desk you were using to rewrite shipment history. Impression is not proof. No, she said, but it tells me which proof you fear. Rusk turned to Kael. Majesty, she is trespassing in an active royal office during a construction emergency. By morning, if she continues, every contractor in this palace will claim political interference. The ceremony will fail. Your enemies will call it fear. Kael looked toward the west arch, where men were moving under torchlight. Seris knew what Rusk was doing. He had set the king's wound on the table again. 4 claims, 3 armies, 640 dead. Stability as hostage. Arrest me if you intend to, she said. Kael's eyes snapped back to her. She held out the blotting sheet. But do not call it safety. For a moment, no one moved. Then Kael said, no one arrests her. Tonight. Rusk's expression did not change. Then the Crown accepts responsibility for her interference. The Crown already has responsibility. That was new. Not enough, but new. Kael turned to Seris. You have until the ceremony to complete the proof. After that, if you accuse my Chancellor in public and fail, I cannot shield you from the guilds. I did not ask you to shield me. I know. The quiet answer unsettled her more than an argument would have. Rusk bowed. As Majesty wishes, he gave way too easily. Seris realized why when the ground shivered. Not hard, not long. But under the west arch, men shouted. A crash followed, then another. Dust rolled out of the unfinished passage like breath from a buried mouth. Seris ran before anyone ordered her not to. The west arch was not down. That was the mercy. The ceremonial facing had given way along the lower brace, spilling stone across the work trench. One cart lay tipped, canvas torn open. Beneath the edge of the collapsed facing, a man's arm thrashed once and went still. Orin? Mara cried. No, Seris said, though she did not know. She counted helmets, boots, positions. Beric, lamp left. Tomlin, rope. Nobody pulls until I know what is bearing weight. KL arrived at her shoulder. What do I do? She pointed without looking at him. Keep every official back. If Rusk's men step on that trench, they may kill him. Kale turned and blocked the passage with his own body. Rusk came behind him. Majesty, rescue crews are under my office. Not tonight. Seris dropped to her knees near the stone. She could see the trapped worker now. Hask's boy, alive, cheek pressed into mud, one leg pinned under facing blocks that should never have been set that night. He tried to speak. Do not, Seris said. Breathe shallow. His eyes found hers, terrified and ashamed, as if being trapped were another report Rusk would call misconduct. The torn canvas flapped beside him. Under it, stamped on the hidden side of a cracked block, Seris saw a shipment mark that had not been scraped away. Ledge 9. Hrinti. Emergency replacement. She looked back toward the contractor office, toward the ledgers Rusk had tried to reconcile, while men worked under stone, already split before it left the quarry. The financial motive and the physical danger had just met in the same trench. Then the pinned block shifted a finger's width. Hask's boy screamed. Seris set both hands on the mud and raised her voice. Everyone quiet. If this arch moves again, we do not have minutes. We have breaths. If anyone moved too quickly, Hask's boy would lose his leg. If anyone moved wrongly, he would lose his life. Seris made the whole passage become smaller in her mind. Fallen facing blocks, half-set mortar, west brace, trench lip, pinned worker, 3 load paths, 1 honest direction through the mess. Fear had no useful measurement, so she put it where she put pain, anger, and the sight of Kale Draven standing between Rusk's men and the trench. Lamp lower, she said. No, not there. Left. I need the shadow under the block. Tomlin dropped to his knees with a lantern. Mara caught the boy's hand when he reached for the stone, crushing him. Do not help us by dying, Mara told him. He made a sound that might have been a laugh if his teeth had not been clenched. Seris lay flat in the mud and looked beneath the fallen facing. The stamped block from Ledge 9 had landed across his thigh, but it was not the only weight. Behind it, 3 smaller stones had wedged under the brace and were holding a section of decorative facing that should never have been installed while the foundation line was disputed. Do not pull the top block, she said. One of Rusk's rescue captains snapped. If we lift the visible weight, you release the wedge behind it and drop the arch skin onto his pelvis. The captain flushed. You are suspended, and the stone is still heavy. Kale turned his head just enough. You heard her. Rusk's voice came from beyond him. Majesty, if unauthorized methods cause death, the crown already caused enough tonight, Kale said. That stopped even Seris for half a breath. Then Hask's boy groaned, and the room began again. Seris took her mother's chain from her coat. Beric, 4 to 11, hold tension from the trench lip to the brace foot. Beric moved before she finished. Mara, mark every stone that touches his leg. Tomlin, give me mud depth at the rear wedge. Orin, I'm here. Orin stepped from the shadows, white with dust and sleeplessness. You should be in bed, Seris said. You said you would not spend me. I came at my own cost. She wanted to argue. She did not have the breaths. Then stand where I can see you. Tell me if the floor kicks. He nodded. Kael stripped off his black mantle. Where do you need strength? Not command. Strength. That mattered less than rescue, and more than she wanted it to. On your knees, Seris said. Both hands under that side stone when I tell you. You lift 1 inch, not 2. If you prove you are stronger than instructed, you kill him. Kyle went down into the mud without hesitation. Rusk made a small motion toward the clerks, and Seris saw it. Do not write yet, she said. The nearest clerk froze. Rusk's brows lifted. An accident report must begin at once. No, you will not start the ending before we know whether he lives. Kale's voice came low from the trench. "No report until she says." Seris placed the chain across the stones. The calibration marks caught lantern light. 4, 11, 19, 33. She measured the distance between brace foot and fracture face, then again, then once more, because the third measurement was the one she trusted when her hands shook. The collapsed facing had rotated along the exact angle she had marked days ago. Her warning had not been theory. The arch had failed, where her load calculation said it would fail if cracked ledge 9 stone carried night-set mortar over a moving line. Proof was arriving with blood on it. "Ready," she said. "Kale, lift. Beric, wedge. Tomlin, mud out. Mara, pull only when his knee clears. Hask, look at me." The boy's eyes rolled toward her. "What is your first name?" "Evan." "Evan, when I say breathe, you breathe in and do not shout. Shouting tightens the leg. We need slack." He nodded, tears cutting clean tracks through dust. "Now." Kyle lifted 1 inch. "No more." Beric drove a flat wedge under the sidestone. Tomlin scooped mud with both hands. Mara pulled Evan's hips 1/2 inch, stopped, then pulled again on Seris's count. The rear wedge shifted. Orin said, "Floor." Seris felt it through her elbows. A small kick, a living answer. "Hold." Kale's arms strained. Bronze scales darkened along his wrists, heat rising under skin, but he did not lift higher. For once, a king's restraint did more than his power. The tremor passed. "Again," Seris said. This time, Evan came free with a sound that tore through the passage. Mara and Orin dragged him onto the planks. His leg was broken, but below the knee his foot moved, alive, in pain, not crushed into silence under ceremonial stone. Only then did Seris sit back. The rescue captain stared at her chain, then at the brace. The top block would have killed him. Yes. Kale knelt in mud, breathing hard. Dust streaked his face. For the first time since Seris had known him, he looked less like a monument and more like a man standing inside the cost of his own order. Rusk stepped forward. The worker survived because Majesty intervened. The collapse appears to result from unauthorized, suspended personnel directing an unstable worksite. Seris almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because he had the report ready in his mouth before the blood was wiped from the floor. Kyle rose slowly. "Say that again." Rusk bowed his head. "Majesty, say in front of the boy that she caused the collapse." A thin silence spread. Rusk did not say it. He was too intelligent for a lie that could be pinned to one living witness too quickly. "I said appears," he replied. Seris picked up the cracked ledge 9 block. It took both hands and pain moved through her bruised wrists. This block was stacked inward at the quarry, hidden cracked face against stone. It was shipped as emergency replacement. It was set tonight after the West Arch stoppage. It failed along the same angle as Orin's dust, the quarry sample, and the line my sealed map recorded. Rusk's eyes went to the block mark. Green tie. Emergency replacement. Not accusation. Question. Who signed the shipping order? Kale looked at the mark too. "Find the order." Rusk bowed. "At once." "No," Seris said. Everyone turned. She pointed past the collapsed facing into the narrow crawl gap exposed behind the brace. "The order can wait 10 minutes. "That cannot." Beric followed her gaze. There, half buried behind broken mortar, was a bronze survey anchor set into the old foundation bed. It should have stood at the original grid point, untouched since the first palace survey. It did not. The anchor head had been cut, shifted 2 handspans east, and reset under newer mortar. Mara whispered, "That is one of yours." "One of the original fixed points." Kale came closer. "What does it mean?" Seris crawled toward it, careful not to disturb the edges. Her breath slowed until the whole world became anchor, mortar, cut mark, measure. "It means the current plan was not only redrawn, The physical reference point was moved to make the redrawing look true. She laid her mother's chain from the brace foot to the anchor. The mark at 19 should have met the old notch in the stone. It met nothing. 2 handspans east. It crossed the reset bronze head perfectly. Someone had moved the palace's measuring truth. Rusk said, very softly, "Examiner Vane, step away from that anchor." Seris looked back at him through the dust and broken lantern light. For the first time all night, she smiled, without warmth. "No," she said. "Now we have your hands on the ground." The foundation ceremony began at noon because Rusk wanted sunlight on the lie. White banners hung from the unfinished royal wing. Guildmasters stood in ordered rows. Nobles filled the tile court, dressed in winter velvet, as if ceremony could make stone obedient. Workers were kept behind a rope line, close enough to be seen as gratitude, too far to speak as witnesses. Seris stood at the edge of the court, with mud still dried at the hem of her coat. Kale had offered her a clean mantle that morning. She had refused it. If the court wanted to see the woman accused of contaminating evidence, stealing plans, and frightening builders, then the court could also see the dust on her sleeves from saving Evan Hask's life. Her mother's chain lay coiled at her hip. In her satchel were the Ledge 7 sample, Orin's linen dust, the layered inspection sheet, the blotting impression, the pendulum objection, and a rubbing of the shifted survey anchor. Not one piece solved everything. Together, they weighed more than Rusk's polished plan. Kale stood on the ceremonial dais beside the first foundation stone. He looked royal again, black mantle fastened, bronze scale marks hidden under formal cuffs. But his right hand was bandaged from the rescue, and Seris saw him flex it once before the crowd settled. Rusk began with the voice of a man who had already won. "Today we affirm stability. We reject panic. We honor labor, order, and the lawful completion of the Dragon King's western wing." The guild masters nodded. Some with belief, some with fear, some because nodding was cheaper than choosing. Rusk lifted a clean plan for all to see. This approved survey confirms no active fault beneath the ceremonial foundation. The suspended examiner's claims have delayed wages, endangered contracts, and encouraged disorder. Kale's eyes moved to Seris. "Not permission." Warning. This was the moment where failure would destroy her and everyone who had helped her. Seris stepped forward. "I object to the plan." A murmur passed through the court. Rusk did not look surprised. "On what authority?" "Measurement. Your instruments are under review. My chain was recorded as personal property by your clerk. The clerk will read the record." The clerk went pale. Kyle turned. "Read it." The clerk read the description aloud. 66 feet. V. Vane, 4 marks, 11, 1933, certified against the Royal Standard Rod. Seris uncoiled the chain across the tile court. "The current plan depends on this anchor." She pointed to the bronze head set near the dais. "Last night, behind the collapsed west brace, I found the original anchor cut and reset 2 handspans east." Rusk smiled. A dramatic claim from an unauthorized rescue scene. Seris held up the rubbing. "The old notch remains in the foundation bed. The chain mark at 19 meets the old notch. It does not meet the reset anchor. The physical reference point was moved." Beric stepped from the worker line before any guard could stop him. "I witnessed the measure." "You are associated with her," Rusk said. "I am associated with arithmetic." A few workers laughed before fear swallowed it. Seris placed Orin's linen and the quarry sliver on a black board. "This dust came from the west arch after Jalen's injury. This stone came from Ledge 7 before entering the palace. Both show sheer faces along the same direction." Rusk lifted one hand. "Dust and fragments are interpretation." "Yes?" Seris faced the guildmasters. "So interpret them." That was the first crack in the room. A protected official could dismiss one woman. He could not easily dismiss every master of stonecraft Without showing he feared their craft, KL looked to the guild row. "Examine them." 3 masters came forward. None hurried. None wanted to stand in the wrong history. They bent over the board. One said, "Same face." Another said, "Same angle." The oldest said nothing at first. Then he looked at Rusk. "Fresh strain, not old weathering." The workers behind the rope began to whisper. Seris brought out the layered inspection sheet. "My refusal seal lies beneath Chancellor Rusk's approval wash. The ink dried first. His office did not replace my refusal. It covered it." Rusk's expression remained smooth, but his eyes went once to the guards. Seris saw it. So did Kyle. "Do not move," Kale said to the guards. Rusk bowed slightly. "Majesty, she is presenting stolen drafts, contaminated dust, and a sentimental chain before foreign guests. And you are answering none of it," Kale said. The court changed then. Not loudly, not kindly. The air shifted because power had shifted its weight. Seris took out the final page. Contractor blotting, impression. Early completion bonus for ceremonial facing. Cost savings retained by the Chancellor's discretionary foundation fund. Emergency replacement stone from Ledge 9. Same mark found on the block that pinned Evan Hask. Rusk's voice sharpened at last. "Enough. Seize the stolen materials." 2 guards stepped forward. Kyle came down from the dais. "No." The words struck the court harder than a shout. Rusk turned. "Majesty, I sealed her room," Kale said. A silence opened. Kale faced the crowd. "Not Seris. I accepted the revised survey. I allowed the map room to be sealed. I let worker reports pass through the same office accused by the evidence. I restored wages without controlling the roster, and men were sent back under the line at night. The first harm was mine." Seris did not move. She had wanted accountability. Hearing it in public did not soften the wound. It made the shape of it visible. Kale looked to the guildmasters. "The Foundation records are opened. Now, the shipping orders, injury logs, inspection seals, rosters, contractor payments, and standards office reports will be read under independent witness." Rusk's calm finally broke into something colder. "You would weaken the throne in front of every house that waits for weakness." Kale stepped onto the tile court, directly where Seris's chain crossed the ceremonial path. "No. I weakened it when I needed the building to be safe more than I needed to know whether it was." The first obsidian tile rose beneath his boot. A hard black tooth lifted through the polished floor, then another, then a third. The crowd pulled back. The tiles rose along Seris's chain, not in a circle, not in spectacle, but in a straight, merciless path from the map room direction through the dais and under the western wing, exactly where her buried line ran. The oldest guildmaster whispered, "Living pressure." Seris did not look at Rusk. She looked at the workers behind the rope. "Move them back," she said. KL heard the command in her voice and obeyed it before pride could interfere. "Clear the workers. Open the lower passages. No one enters the west arch." Rusk moved then, not toward the exit, but toward the table where the record sat waiting for ceremonial signatures. Fire flickered in his palm. Dragonstone clerks used small record flames to dry ink. Rusk had no dragon blood, but he had a striker and a dish of oil. Mara saw him first. "Seris." Seris threw the black board. It struck Rusk's wrist. Oil splashed across the clean plan instead of the layered sheet. KL caught Rusk by the collar and drove him down onto the tiles. The raised obsidian split the court between them. A sound moved through the palace. Deep, long, not dust, not settlement, not a floor politely answering a king. A quake. The first true shove rolled beneath the western wing. Banners snapped without wind. The ceremonial stone cracked across its polished face. Somewhere below, bells began to ring. Seris grabbed her chain and looked at the line of rising obsidian running under Kael's feet. Truth had arrived. Now they had to survive. The first quake did not bring the palace down. That was the mercy. It only told the truth loudly enough that no office could seal it afterward. Seris stood in the tile court while the western wing groaned under stone. Workers ran through lower passages, nobles pressed against outer doors, guild masters shouted measurements over the bells. Above them, banners tore loose and drifted through dust. Kael had Rusk pinned to the raised obsidian, one hand at the Chancellor's collar, the other braced against a floor that had finally answered. "Get him out," Seris said. Kael looked up. "Rusk? No. The records." For one instant, the old reflex crossed his face. Then he understood. A dead Chancellor could still leave a clean lie behind if the archive burned. He dragged Rusk to 2 guards. "Alive. Bound. No private room. No private clerk. If he speaks, 3 witnesses write it." Rusk's mouth curved with blood at one corner. "You think procedure saves you now?" "No," Kael said. "It saves everyone from me." Then he released him. "Where?" "Foundation archive first. Shipping orders. Standards, office reports, injury ledgers. Mara, contractor books. Beric, survey anchors. Tomlin, workers below the royal quarter." "And you?" Mara asked. Seris looked at the obsidian path running toward the west arch. "I keep the building standing long enough for you to get them out." The second shove came harder. A crack snapped across the ceremonial stone and ran toward the dais. Seris dropped to one knee to see the break. Cracks had language, if a person did not waste time wishing they were silent. "Weight is moving east," she said. "Open the wine cellar arches. They can take spread if the west brace lets go." A guild master stared. "That puts the royal apartments unsupported. They are already unsupported. Clear them." Kael did not argue. He shouted the order himself. For the next hour, Seris became measure. Chain from tile to arch foot. Chalk across fracture. Hands on stone only where touch could tell her what eyes could not. She sent servants through the lower laundry passage before the ceiling split. She ordered kitchen fires drowned. She forced nobles out through a servant's stare because pride weighed less. At the west arch, the third shove came as the last 4 night workers stumbled clear. Orin was among them, white-haired with dust again, holding Nedry upright. Then the brace failed. Kael moved before she could tell him not to. He threw his shoulder under the temporary beam where 3 workers had frozen, and dragon heat flared beneath his skin. Not enough to stop the building, enough to buy breaths. "Out," he said through his teeth. Seris did not praise him. She used him. "Hold 1 inch. No more." His eyes flicked to hers. Mud, dust, guilt, and fear stripped the throne from him. He held exactly 1 inch. The workers cleared. The beam cracked. "Now let it fall," Seris said. He obeyed. The west facing came down in a controlled roar, crushing the empty trench instead of the men. Dust swallowed the court. When it cleared, the new wing stood wounded, its false face broken open to unsafe stone. By nightfall, Rusk's system lay on tables under independent witness. Not one confession solved it. That would have been too kind. The shipping orders carried his grey seal beside Ledge 9 emergency replacement. The Standards Office report condemning Seris's rods had been drafted before the rods were tested. The injury ledgers had been rebound, original page cords cut. Contractor payments showed early completion bonuses routed through the Chancellor's discretionary fund. 6 workers testified only after Kael guaranteed wages in writing under 3 guild seals. Ilvan identified the layered approval sheet. Beric matched the shifted survey anchor to Seris's chain. Rusk stood through all of it without pleading. At dawn, when the final ledger was read, he said only, "The kingdom wanted a finished palace." Seris answered, because no one else had the right tone for the truth. No, you wanted a finished lie. The public judgment came before sunset. Rusk was removed from office, stripped of construction authority, and held for trial under Foundation law. The Western expansion was voided. Every contract tied to Ledge 9 stone was frozen. Every injured builder received full compensation before any noble supplier was paid. The old Foundation records were placed under independent custody. Guild, worker, and civic. No royal office holding two keys. KL signed each order, standing in the broken tile court, not in the throne room. When the final page came, he paused. Independent structural authority over all royal building projects. Seris Vane, examiner restored, answerable to no palace office. He signed. Then he set the pen down and turned the page toward her. "It is yours," he said. "Not a title from me, a limit on me." Seris looked at the ink. The repaired office did not bring back the morning he had let Rusk seal her room. It did not remove Orin's false signature. It did not unbreak bones. But repair was not erasure. Repair was structure after fracture. "I will take the authority," she said. "Not the palace residence. I did not offer it, no. But courts have a way of building cages out of gratitude." He accepted that without defense. That mattered. 3 months later, the palace was not beautiful. It was safer. The West Wing had been dismantled to its honest bones. Ledge 9 stone lay tagged in the yard as evidence. New supports crossed the lower halls according to Seris's plan, checked by engineers who owed nothing to Kyle. The laundry ceiling had been rebuilt first. Mistress Hale had made sure everyone knew. On the morning the independent engineers signed the safety certification, Seris walked alone to the outer gate. Kyle waited outside it. Not inside, not with guards, not in a royal mantle. Just a young man in a dark coat, one hand still scarred where he had broken her seal, and another where he had held the beam 1 inch and no more. "The palace is certified safe," he said. "I know. I wrote the final objection and signed the final approval." A faint smile touched his mouth. Did the approval have more objections than approval? Of course. For a moment, they stood with the open gate between them. Then Kale said, "I am sorry for sealing your room. I am sorry for needing your warning to be absolute before I treated it as worthy. I am sorry I made your honesty easier to punish than Rusk's certainty." Seris looked at him for a long time. There were apologies that asked to be rewarded. This one stood still. "I believe you," she said. His breath changed. "That is not the same as forgiving everything. I know. And it is not consent to court me. I know that too." She stepped through the gate because she chose the side, not because he called her. "My office remains outside the palace," she said. "My records remain outside your custody. If I dine with you, I leave when I wish. If I disagree with you, you do not call it panic. If I tell you a floor is dust and danger both, you put your hand down, and then you wait for my map." KL lowered his head once. Not a bow of court. A promise with no audience. Yes. Seris looked past him to the broken western yard, where workers crossed safe planks under morning light. Then she offered him her hand. Not her chain, not her badge, not her office, only her hand. "One dinner," she said. "Outside the palace." KL took it carefully, as if strength had finally learned its boundary. And this time, when the ground stayed quiet beneath them, neither mistook silence for safety.